Good morning. It is 8 a.m. and I am Elisa Lewis, the CEO and founder of My Animation Life. I'm here to bring you our first live Q&A session. It is a wonderful Friday. It's supposed to snow tomorrow. Woohoo, snow! So I figured what better time it is than now to answer some of your questions. Now, if you ever have a question for My Animation Life, you can send us an email at myanimationlife@gmail.com. But our responses to you will be a lot faster if I just answer the question that we get most often live. So everyone gets the answer at once instead of me or the other people on staff hitting copy paste several times. So here we go. We have a question that is asked, I feel like, at least a few times a month, and is, should I use an artist name? If you're not familiar with an artist name, it is a name that highlights who you are as an artist, but is not the name that you were born with. Well, most likely it's not the name you were born with. Sometimes it's some sort of alternative form of that. But usually when people ask about artist names, it's something that's completely different. Like, my name is Elisa Lewis, and I may go by Razor Staffer. Something that sounds really cool and edgy and is memorable, and other people don't have it, but is not my real name. So that's an artist name. I wrote out a nice little response for you all who are asking about using artist names, and I'll just read it off. And for those of you who are watching live, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and I will keep checking the comments and answer your questions live. Alrighty. So, should I use an artist name? Is the question. My response is, no matter who you work for, whether it be yourself or someone else, your name is your brand, because your legal name is required so often. When you're filing taxes, when you're applying for employment, basically anything that has to do with the government. My opinion favors using your legal name. Also, far into the future, when people reflect on you and your body of work, would you like them to know you by your name that is like your pseudonym name, or by the name you were born with? Okay, so let me just tell you some reasons why people use artist names, just so you get an idea of both sides of the argument. If your name is too hard to pronounce, or too hard to spell, or it's really common like John Smith, or doesn't resonate with the feel of your art, then you would want to use an artist name. So if you have a name like John Smith and you are any kind of artist, know that there are tons of other John Smiths that do whatever you do, just because it's so common. And if you want to set yourself apart from those other people, then it makes sense that you'd come up with some sort of alternative name. Think about when you were back in school and you had several people in your classroom by the same name. You came up with using their last name or some letter, or maybe Big John or Fast John or something like that to help distinguish between them. There were also branding issues, like your name has been taken online. I've had that issue. There are several other Elisa Lewises online, and they're very talented, so when I go sign up for a social media account or a new email with something, I have to be careful to be, I guess I have to be really fast. I guess that's better to say it, is when I see a new social media thing pop up, I go, let me grab an account, even if I may not use that that social media platform immediately, because that name will be gone before I know it. Even worse is if it was taken by an artist in your field. So if you're a painter and another John Smith takes the John Smith painter name, then it'll be a lot more difficult for you, and you'll definitely have to work on your branding to distinguish yourself from that other person. Protecting your privacy. And you can seemingly live two lives like this. When you are doing something that you don't want to impact one side of your life or one aspect of your life, then it's a good idea to use an artist name. Let's say you are a painter of really violent scenes, but you also are in a children's choir. then you may want to separate those two and use your legal name with a children's choir and an artist name with your violent paintings. So that's a good reason. If you really prefer not to go by your name, or you are changing an existing name, a name change is a chance to reinvent yourself. So if you already have an artist name, then if you want to rebrand yourself as a new kind of artist, it's a great idea to change your name. It's already not your legal name, and it shows everyone that they shouldn't be expecting the same quality or level of art or even genre from you as this new persona. You'll see that a lot of actors have different persona names, and they act differently based on their persona. So as an artist, you definitely have that flexibility. The freedom, you can adopt multiple personas and take it and make it easier to live your life the way you choose. So let's say you want to pull like a Catch Me If You Can and just have tons of different personas. You can manage them all. It doesn't have to be like a complete changeover. And, you know, artist names are great for allowing you to live multiple ways of your life. A lot of female artists choose artist names early on in life to avoid confusion when they get married and take their partner's name, or as a kind of insurance for if they have multiple marital partners. So in this day and age, divorce is a real thing. It is. It's sad. We hope it doesn't happen. But for a lot of women who change their last names to their husband's name, it affects their career. So if I were to change my last name to Silver, and now I'm Elisa Silver instead of Elisa Lewis, people have to either know that I'm Elisa Silver because they have some sort of connection to me, or I have to go out and now tell people, my name is Elisa Silver now, my name is Elisa Silver now. But if I use some sort of artist name, I would never have to change that. And, you know, if I got married later on in the future again and changed my last name, I wouldn't have to say, my name is Elisa Lewis, now it's Elisa Silver, now it's Elisa Drake, and then just keep changing it. That would definitely affect my career and my audience, and yeah, in the end it would affect my paycheck, which isn't okay. Many people choose artist names to fit into the culture surrounding their art, to avoid discrimination, conceal their genders, and so on. So this is really common, especially in the writing world. You'll see people try to avoid like gender discrimination by only using the first letter of their legal name and then using their last name. Or if they're in a genre that expects them to have a certain kind of personality or some sort of traits, then they'll change it to something that fits that genre. Let's say your name was Lady Kitten Hands and you were going to join a Rough Riders motorcycle club. It would be really difficult for you to be taken seriously with that name. You'd have to work really hard to get people to believe that you belong there. So using an artist name would be a quick way to establish that you would belong in that brand and that you are definitely a leader in that avenue. Now let's talk about some common issues with using an artist name. Building trust and notoriety is hard enough, and you would have to do it twice. So when you're using your government name or your legal name, you've already lived a life under that name and have established yourself with your community and your peers and your family and so on as that person under that name. The second you change that name, it's almost like having a whole new persona that you have to fill in. It's like having no credit and having to build it again. So if I were to change my name to Lady Star or something like that, I would have to now tell everyone what Lady Star is about. I would have to start doing daily sketches or start doing talks and appearances under that name. People would have to become accustomed to that brand of the new name. It's also a commitment. If you ever decide to drop that name, you're essentially dropping that brand. Yes. So if I ever decided I'm not going to be Lady Star anymore, I just stop using that name and I start using my legal name, then that persona of Lady Star is destroyed. It's essentially been left in the casket and just like it's had its funeral, people will no longer look at me and say, oh, well, she's just like this persona. No. If you go back, it can cause a lot of issues with your audience. So be sure that when you choose an artist name, that it's something that you're going to love for a long time. Think of it like a tattoo. It's not as permanent because you can change it. You just know that it's going to be a lot of hard work. Your old network knowing you by one name, your new network knowing you by another. How will you keep both parties up to speed on your artistic happenings? So if you have two artistic names, maybe one is your legal name and one is the pseudonym, or both of them are pseudonyms and you have your legal name, which has nothing to do with your artistic career. If you have multiple names and you have multiple communities that know you by separate names, then you essentially have two small communities. You do not have one big community. Using one name allows you to have everyone together in one space, but when you start splitting them up and you start having multiple personas, then you essentially have these small groups everywhere. Keeping them on the same page at the same event is a little tricky. So let's say a real life example would be you're going to go do a presentation somewhere. How do you advertise for that? Do you say your persona name plus your real name? Or do you do it like, I think about the wrestler Dwayne Johnson, how he's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So he just fuses them all together, and he can go by either one. Do you do something like that? If it's something that you wanted to keep separate in the beginning, you didn't want someone who knew you as your legal name to know you as your artistic name, and vice versa, then how do you handle being in the public eye, or even just in general, personal, public events with both personas? There are some things you can consider when it comes to choosing whether or not you're going to use an artistic name, and that is to use a variation of your already government legal name. So if your name was Jonathan Lucas, you could go by John Lucas, or J. Luke, or JL, something like that. That's a simple way to distinguish yourself from another artist who may be in the same field as you and have the same name. It's one of the most common ways to do it. Sometimes people insert their middle initial. I have done that because there are so many Elisa Lewises, but there's no Elisa A. Lewis, so I do that. You can legally change your name to avoid confusion on documents. So this is something people do often when they're married. Instead of having their premarital name and their marital name, they'll just change their premarital name to their marital name and only use that name. You can do that. You can change your legal name into your artistic name, and that way it doesn't matter if you're on a tax form, if you are doing business with someone across seas, or if you are doing a presentation in your hometown, it's all the same name and no one's confused. Incorporate your artist name and make it a company. Then you have an umbrella of your legal name under your artistic name. So instead of using your name as, I don't know, some sort of artistic name where this is like a persona, just use it as a company name. Like My Animation Life is not my name. My name is Elisa Lewis, and I work with My Animation Life. I work for My Animation Life. I work under My Animation Life. So I can say My Animation Life, and you can say, oh, that's with Elisa. Right now it's Elisa and company. It's Elisa and several people who put their hands in to assist the company grow. But if it were just me, I could still say Elisa Lewis and have My Animation Life as a company. If the name were something else like John Lucas was the name of the company, that would be totally fine. I could still be Elisa Lewis as John Lucas, like with the company. That's one way to do it legally, and so when people write their checks out, when they do anything with you, they know that there are two names, and they're not confused. They're just like, this is a person with two names. At very least, you should get a DBA, and that is a doing business as, because what I find is the most difficult thing to get around when it comes to artist names is your paycheck. When you work with an artist or with a client who is commissioning you on art, or any kind of appearance fees you're getting, or tutorial fees, or whatever it is, when you're doing business and you need to receive money from someone and they need to write a name down on a check, they need to know the correct name that is going to be recognized by your bank. So using a DBA will allow people to write down your artistic name on their checks and never know your real name, or your legal name or your government name, and your bank will still recognize it. If you want to know more about DBAs, there are plenty of searches online. You can also email us directly at myanimationlife@gmail.com, and we will tell you more about DBAs because a lot of our artists use those. I have a question for you guys. Question for the audience. Have you ever considered using an artist name? What ultimately helped you decide what to do? And are there other factors that I have failed to consider above? So please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know if you've ever used an artist name, if you've chosen not to use an artist name for some reason. What was that reason? And what are some things that I forgot to consider when considering whether you should use an artist name or your government name? That has been your Q&A for this morning. If you have any questions you'd like for me to answer live, please just email me. Send an email to myanimationlife@gmail.com. We will save these questions and we will answer them next Friday. Yeah, that's all I have. Oh, yes, an event. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug this. This Sunday at Flax in Midtown, that one on Peachtree, you're going to see How to Work Remotely by April Borchelt. She is a background painter for Nickelodeon Animation Studios, and she, straight out of school, just 2 years out of school, just straight out of university, landed a huge job with them, and she gets to work 100% from home. She doesn't have to go into a studio. She doesn't have to report to someone directly, face to face, anything like that. She's getting to live this dream life straight out of school. And if you want to learn how you can work remotely and how you can find jobs to work remotely, please come to our free event, absolutely free, this Sunday from 1 to 5 at Flax. I will leave the information in the description of this video. Continue to have a good morning. I know a lot of you guys are leaving for work, so I will say goodbye.